The people that I drank with at like 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, none of them are alive today. And there was like 3 guys that we drank with. I don't want to mention their names, but they were all dead from alcoholism. And they didn't drink any less or any more than me at that time. But I got sober, I got sober when they didn't get sober.
Hi, my name is Isabel Donnelly, and welcome back to the Sober Spill. Today, in honor of Recovery Month, we are here with my good friend, Patrick. He's someone that's super important to me, and I love getting to sit down and chat with you, whether it's a long car ride or on camera. So, for the people that don't know who you are, who are you?
My name is Pat McCarthy. I'm the Director of Recovery Experience here at Mountainside. I'm also a husband, father, and a big-time Grateful Dead fan. And I get ridiculed for planting flowers instead of vegetables around my house.
And he's a big Giants fan, which you could argue is a form of masochism.
I do love the New York Giants.
Yeah, much to your chagrin.
Yes.
So we're having you here today because it's Recovery Month. You're someone with long-term sobriety. You're someone who went through Mountainside in its early days, and you've endured a lot in sobriety, and I think you're a good example of anything. If you're going to drink, it's always an excuse, right? Like with AA, we can get through anything in sobriety. It doesn't matter what life throws at us. And you've been through a lot. So to take it back, when did you have your first drink? Did you have your I've arrived moment? What were the circumstances around it? And what were you seeking when you started drinking?
Well, I think the first time that I took a drink because I wanted to take I was going to take a drink to change the way I felt. I was in junior high. But my first drink being, my mother was off the boat from Ireland, and she used to give me, if you didn't feel good, she gave you hot toddies. So my first drink was probably like 7 or 8 years old. But it was still for a cold or something. But the first time I caught a buzz, I was about maybe 12, 13 years old, maybe 7th, 8th grade. I can't really call it. But I do remember, I should say, I didn't know how bad I felt until I felt good. And then once I had a buzz, I remember thinking to myself, I didn't know I was feeling bad the day before, but being straight was never going to be as good as this. So I was obsessed from day one. Like some people, their alcoholism or their addiction progresses. The use and the amount and the severity of getting it increased over time. But from the first time I caught a buzz, I was down. I was like, where is it? When can I do this again? When you're a young kid, you don't get the access. But by the time I was 14 years old, I pretty much had a buzz almost every day, unless I was, in treatment or stopped by the police or something.
Yeah, and I love what you said about not knowing how you felt bad until you drank for the first time, especially as kids or as teenagers. We don't have the vocabulary to be like, I don't feel right in my skin.
Yeah, exactly.
And until we have that solution, we don't know that the way we feel is abnormal until it's like, oh, is this what normal people feel like?
Yeah, I always felt like the odd man out. I always felt different, felt weird. People that know me are like, you should feel weird. You're weird. But you know what I'm saying? When you're a young person, a young kid, feeling that way in elementary school and then junior high and I don't know, feeling like I don't belong. And then when I took a drink, besides, making me feel like I could come out and play, it quieted some negativity that I had going on in my head. When I went to Catholic school when I was younger, and nothing against Catholic schools or anything like that, but I'm dyslexic, and in the 70s, I don't think the school I went to knew what that was. So I was treated very different, and kind of poorly. And man, it got in my head like I was different, and it wasn't just a feeling. It was something I felt like I was told. So I would try to in my school years, I would always try to like hide that or just try to blend in. But inside, I felt awful. So when I was drinking and drugging, that was gone, you know?
Yeah. And when did you, so you said at age 14, you were like catching a buzz to some extent, like every day.
Yeah.
When
By
did
the time
you,
I was in high school.
yeah, which is alarming, I feel like, from a parental standpoint, especially you who you have kids that are like in high school at this point. Is that weird for you, imagining like at that age what you were doing?
Yeah, because, you know, I used to think I'm not hurting anyone but myself.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, you know, for my mom, you know, for my dad, but really for like my mom, because my father was, you know, it was back in the day, my father worked all day, came home, and she was the one dealing with us all the time. And, you know, she's a beautiful woman off from Ireland, beautiful brogue. And her 12-year-old son came home drunk from school one day, and he never came home sober again for the next 22 years. So I don't know what that was like for her. You know, she was like, she used to say, Lord, save us, he's high as a devil. Jesus, look at him, you know. And my friends would say that to me, you know, over the years, and it was funny. But for her, I don't think it was so funny.
Probably not. No.
You know, and I think to myself, you know, my son, you know, he's 14. If he came home, you know, when he was 12 years old, bombed from school, and then never walked in the door straight again, without a care in the world. I mean, when I started drinking, any kind of like, it was ever like, you know, watching Peanuts, Charlie Brown, and you hear the teacher, wah, 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 wah. As soon as anyone ever talked about my drinking, that's all I heard. I was like, are you kidding me? The value, the relief I get from using is well worth any trouble that I'm going to get in right now. Like, there was no price I wouldn't pay to catch that buzz.
And when did you first know that your drinking might be abnormal? I mean, I think a lot of times we know it's abnormal before we're like, but this is a problem. So when did you know it was abnormal, and when did you know it was an issue?
Well, when I was 15 years old, I came home from school one day, and there was a book on my pillow. Nobody ever said a word. Typical Irish family. But my mom had left a book that said, "The Boy That Drank Too Much." and I, you know, I'm thinking to myself, doesn't she know I'm dyslexic? I'm not reading this thing. You know? So I wish I still had the book. I never opened it once. I was like, why would I read about a story I know very well? Mm. You're damn right this boy drinks too much, you know, and at the time I thought it was funny. In fact, I told my friends, and she never mentioned leaving the book, you know, and I never mentioned, I threw it in a drawer and never thought about it again too much after that. But I don't know, when, you know, I guess in the middle of my teens, 16, 17, like the people that I drank with in high school, I drank with a lot of people in high school, but the people that I drank with at like 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, none of them are alive today. And there was like 3 guys that we drank with, you know, I don't want to mention their names, but they were all dead from alcoholism. And they didn't drink any less or any more than me at that time. But I got sober, you know, when they didn't get sober.
Yeah, what do you think was different in that circumstance?
I don't know, because I came to Connecticut and met some people, and you know, I was, the first time I came to Alcoholics Anonymous was in 1990, and I went to Nyack Hospital detox. And I had no idea what Alcoholics Anonymous was. Do you want me to tell you this funny little tale? It shows you how. So I didn't think Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't think people ever got sober. When people used to tell me about, like, you know, abstinence, I'd be like, oh my God, it sounds awful. So when people used to talk about AA around me for whatever reason. And I thought AA was a place where alcoholics or people that drank too much went to drink, because the bars wouldn't have them drinking in the town, and their family was sick of their drinking at home. So the churches gave them alcohol, and they sat in the basements and got drunk. So when people used to suggest AA to me, I look at them and I say, well, there's still a few places that allow me to drink. I don't need to go there yet.
That is, where did you get that perception? 'Cause I don't even know where you would achieve that.
Well, I mean, like I said, Grateful Dead shows, there's a lot of psychedelics involved. I probably took out a little ride in my head and says, well, if worse comes to worse, you go to AA and, catch a buzz in the afternoons.
Yeah, you probably told yourself that.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, okay.
Because I had no idea that people would actually stop drinking once they found the magic elixir, But it hadn't really kicked my ass the way it was going to. You know what I mean? And when I went to Nyack Hospital, I remember there was a smoking room. So I said to them, I'd like to go smoke a cigarette. I was there for like 3 days in the bed dying. And the woman said, if you're well enough to smoke, you're well enough to go to the AA meeting. And I was like, AA meeting? Lady, this is a detox. What are you, crazy? So she was like, sir, just go smoke. Like, I don't know what you're afraid of in AA, And when I went to the AA meeting, this guy that I knew from the Grateful Dead scene that I hadn't seen in a few years, he walked in and he was the speaker. He had 5 years sober. And I was blown away by it because, when you come to Alcoholics Anonymous, they'll say, if you hang around long enough, you hear your story. And I was in AA for about 3 seconds and I was in the damn story. Like the guy talked about me, him and some other friends of ours, and some of them ain't here anymore. He talked about the way we would use and travel all over the country seeing the dead. And, the thing that was different, he talked about the way he felt at that time. And I never heard anyone talk about that. And then that was the first 20 minutes of his share. And then the last 15, 20 minutes of his share, he talked about sobriety. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, And he looked so healthy, so happy. And he was sober, and I left there. I left the treatment center, used immediately after. Within a few days, I was using, and I kind of felt like, people say you have these moments where like your higher power steps in and gives you this gift, and he, I thought that I drank on mine, you know what I mean?
And were the wharf rats around at that point? Like when you were going to gigs and you were going to shows, did you see recovery there?
Well, me and my friend Jellybean.
Oh, that's a beautiful name.
Yeah. God bless him. He's no longer here, but he was my good friend. His real name was Michael Cawley. And we were walking around the Nassau Coliseum in like 1987, and we were very high on LSD, walking around the set break, just looking at people. And all of a sudden we came across this big circle and these people are holding yellow balloons. And I said, Jelly, what the hell are these guys doing here? And he goes, these guys are sober. He whispered it to me. I said, what? He goes, these guys are sober. I was like, sober? He goes, yeah, they're not on anything. And I said, let's get the hell out of here. It scared the shit out of me. So we ran away. I was like, And I was like, there was nothing in that balloon? He goes, no, it was. So he says, they're in recovery. I go, why? Why the hell would they do that? And that was my first ever exposure to the wharf rats who I wear the necklace. I love them. But they started out in Boston in the early 80s.
And so when did you start feeling uncomfortable with your drinking? So I think a lot of us, or all of us really, to get sober, we have to hit a certain level of discomfort. Like when did it stop being fun and you became aware it was something you had to do?
Well, it was kind of already making decisions for me without me saying. I used to play basketball in high school, and then something happened where I got kicked off my team the senior year. So there was like scholarships on the table that would, even not playing the last year of high school, I still had like 3 scholarships. You
could have been Larry Bird.
Well, no, he was good. I was more like a shorter, whiter Dennis Rodman. I was a rebounder, But I love playing basketball, but when I started drinking and drugging, it kind of took a back seat, but I was still able to pull it off and play really well. And so when I was going to go to school, I thought to myself, and it was really the dyslexia and my drinking. There was no way I wanted to go to college because I would be embarrassed all over again about this learning disability. And so I went to work for a highway department in my town. And, from the beginning, showing up the day after payday, like I don't think I ever made the day after St. Patty's Day or maybe the next 3 days, And I had my boss ask me one time, he said, are you in the Grateful Dead? And I said, no. I said, why would you ask that? He goes, because every time they come through town, you go out of town with them. He's like, can they play without you? I'm like, yeah, they play all the time without me. He goes, my God, anytime I would miss work constantly because of my using. But it was a strong union, and my addiction, eventually I lost that job. And it's like, it's a very, very hard job to lose. So you got to really, really mess up bad. And I did, and it was directly related to my drinking. But any relationship, with any girl that I was in love with or even just any relationship, everything always ended really bad because of my drinking and my drug use. There wasn't one part of my life that wasn't absolutely affected by that.
Hi, I'm Ricky, recovery support clinician. Mountainside's bespoke recovery offers the highest level of luxury addiction treatment. With the focus on your privacy and schedule, you'll receive intensive one-on-one therapies from our expert team. Enjoy exclusive amenities and concierge services, allowing you to seamlessly integrate healing with your life commitment.
And so what were the circumstances that led you to get sober when you did? For keeps.
Well, I was, I lost that job, which is an amazing civil service job. I got an even better job at the Long Island Railroad from my father being a homicide detective. His connections in New York City, he helped me get in there. But I worked hard and got in. And I lost that job because of my addiction. So he was a person who loses 2 New York civil service jobs, And I still, it wasn't that I would just lower the standards of what I was willing to do to keep drinking, And what happened was I got 3 DWIs and 3 drug charges. I had 6 arrests in the last 8 months of my drinking. So I was each courthouse was like a ball I had in the air, and I couldn't keep them all up in the air. And a lawyer who I kind of knew, I knew him from high school, who was, getting paid, but he knew me a long time. And he said, why don't you go to rehab? And I've been to rehab quite a few times with the railroad and, a few interventions, but never really took it serious. And I went to rehab strictly to get a letter for court, to see if I can grab some leniency, because they kind of tied them all into this last DWI. And so I called around, and I ended up coming to Mountainside. And I remember in Mountainside, I met Bruce Drever, met Terry Doherty, and I met Jarek Hodge, the guy that was here, who was one of the original 100 clients and ended up working here. He's from Baltimore. And I met Dave Nolan, this guy, Big Dave, who worked overnights. And I met Scuba Steve, who you still see in meetings today.
All of the nicknames. Pat, for anybody who's met him, is like a nickname king. If he encounters you more than 2 times,
you will have a nickname.
There's a code name. Yeah. There's one guy that he's friends with that I didn't know his government name until probably a year into The God Lover.
Yeah.
I referred to him strictly as that, that was his legal name until probably a year in. And then I was like, what is it? It's Mike. It's Mike. And even now he's GI Mike to me. It's not, yeah. But so what was the day you got sober?
So I called Mountainside and they said, all right, listen, sir, why don't you come next Tuesday? And next Tuesday was September 11, 2001. And my cousin Michael, who's no longer with us because of addiction, he was working in a union in New York, and he said, hey, they're giving out applications. And so I went to New York City on September 11th, and I was 2 blocks away from the towers. And, typical my fashion, there was the primaries in the city that day, elections and stuff. So they don't hand out applications on the day that I showed up. So I was in the wrong place. I was in the right place at the wrong time. And, it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and we all know what happened. The first plane hit, and then me and my friend, we jumped in my car, and we I wasn't driving it. He was driving it because I had all the DWIs and I didn't
So
want
you
to
were
go
there on the ground when the...
I was there. I was 2 blocks away. I was,
I didn't know that.
It was enough. Yeah. So the first plane hit and then everyone was going wild. And then the second plane hit when we were on the West Side Highway about to get onto the George Washington Bridge. And the radios, I mean, we were listening to Howard Stern and every radio station was talking about this. It just dominated, you know. And people were panicking. They were just stopped in the West Side Highway, getting out of their cars like it was a parking lot. So we were, you know, it was absolutely insane. And, you know, the radio, there was fighter jets flying up and down the Hudson. Mm-hmm. And they were like, every plane in the sky is a suspect. We were like, whoa, you know.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, you know, when I tell my story or I talk about, you know, my sobriety date is 9/11, people think like, oh, he was inspired by the day, you know, because of what happened. And maybe so, but not on the day. My friend asked me, he said, are you still going to rehab today? And my response to him was like, I wish one of these planes would hit the courthouse. And he's like, come on, man, that's insensitive, you know? But I was so, in my addiction, I was so selfish and I was heartless. But at the end of the day, you know, that day, I went up to the Catskills and my parents drove me over to Mountainside. So I was in abstinence. And when I got here, you know, we get a lot of people from New York. We get a lot of people from Connecticut. A lot of people, you know, it was a ton of New Yorkers here and they were all devastated. And they were like, do you know what happened? I was like, oh, I was there. They were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, I'm hungover. And I was like, listen, I want my room. So I went into the room and I didn't leave the room for like 5 days just to smoke a cigarette. I was like, they were like, it's the 9/11 guy, you know? And while I was here, I was questioning what the hell happened to you if you saw something like that and you wouldn't care? Because that's never who I was. I was always a very sensitive and kind and I wasn't cold, but I didn't know how cold I had gotten in my addiction and how heartless I got. You know, by the time I got sober, I was freebasing a lot, smoking crack and smoking cocaine and drinking like a fish and you know, dead ass broke most of the time because there was a time I used to walk around New York with those big paychecks from civil service. And now it's like, you know, I felt like a bum, you know? So that really bothered me that I should have been more upset because of 9/11.
I think that's a really beautiful sentiment. And it's like so many people can relate to that, where our drinking takes us so far away from the person that we are and like our values. I know I'm a highly sensitive person. Like I started almost crying just thinking about, I don't know, the capacity for human suffering is so hard for me to wrap my head around. But yeah, it takes you so far away from who you are. And you're a very like sensitive, safe place for a lot of people.
I was devastated that I could say that to him. And I was like, God, you know, because if I didn't schedule to come here that day, I would have been drunk by the end of that night and the next few days, and I wouldn't have cared.
I feel like our eyes are both wet. Should we just start crying together right now? This is why we get along so well.
I want to get made fun of for the rest of my life. No, I'm kidding. No, I have no problem crying. And the truth is, like, I remember sitting here in Mountainside thinking, is this what happened? Did I break my soul? Am I that far gone? And I remember Bruce Strieber, you know, I was talking to him about it. And he said, I never seen an amount of pain that wasn't outmatched by the love that we get when we get sober.
You've said that to me before. I've always really loved that.
And man, I was sitting there going, I hope that's true. Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to, you know, I'm a deadhead, man. Like, we're kindness, love, peace, and that's who I've always been, you know what I mean? I was raised by a New York City homicide detective, so there's an edge to some of it.
Of course.
You know, I'll hug you after I have to smack you around a little bit if I have to. But I'm teasing. But it disturbed me to react that way. That's not who I am.
And when did you notice yourself starting to become soft again? Soft in like a positive way. Like, I think that's a beautiful way to be.
Well, it took a long time. Because when I was here, I was aggressive. You know what I mean? And they let me stay here for a long time. They were amazing to me. And the Mountainside is just a beautiful place to heal. You know what I mean? And they didn't push anything on me. Like, I remember I told Bruce Drever I couldn't sleep. And I was out of, I had no benefits, so that, nobody was buying me medication. I said, I can't afford medication. This was a cash place, and I barely squeaked in. And he said, didn't you get a big book on Friday night? And I said, yeah. He goes, that's the best sedative in the house. He goes, if anything will put you to sleep, it'll be that book, which I haven't, saved my life, but it was a good joke. Like he's a guy who loves AA, teasing me about how boring the big book is. And I like that, And the truth is, like, I would do the yoga stuff and the wellness stuff and go on the hikes. And when I would be in treatment before, if somebody broke out any 12-step stuff, my debate would be there. But here I was in such a mellow mood from the activities. And I was like, let me just, and it started making sense, and the truth is I could see the big book in the way that these guys were acting before I read it. Because Bruce was so kind and so, he was tough, but he was fair and he would tell stories about who he was and not who he was now. Like when these guys would share about themselves, I'd be like, geez, that doesn't look like them at all. They were like the most beautiful, kind, happiest people. And they'd share that they were in hell, and it looked good to me. And then when we would read the book, I would be like, what we're talking about in this book is what happened to their lives, So I was like, not to get too 12-step big book guru, but when Bill Wilson says, would I have what I saw in my friend? Of course I would. Of course I'd have it. And the condition I was in when I came here, would I have what I saw in Big Dave? Just laughing, just loving life. I would have taken a quarter of what he had. It was so much better than what I had. And what everything that anyone ever told me about this life is it has come true like tenfold. You know what I mean? Like getting sober is like the single greatest event of my life. Because it's enriched all the other events. Like, I met my wife, Rachel, who I call B. Getting married to her was like one of the happiest days, But it's because I got sober that I could 100% be there for somebody else. Like when, I'm kind of nuts. She knows exactly what she's getting because my life demands honesty, and you could, and then we have Jeremiah and Nora, our two kids, and they were raised, because my wife is in recovery as well, they were raised in a sober house.
And they're wonderful kids. I'm a big fan of both of them.
I've been taking my kids to Grateful Dead shows since they were like, Nora was like 6, Jeremiah was like 6, and my wife and Rachel was like, "Do you think this is a good idea to take Nora to Citi Field to see the Grateful Dead with Dead and Company?" And I said, "I don't know. We're going to find out if it is or not." And it was a good idea. It was the greatest time. And then I remember I was at a Wharf Rat meeting with Jeremiah one time, and he's 6 years old, and I'm talking to the Wharf Rats, and this little guy comes up in a tie-dye, and he yanks my shirt, and he goes, "Hey, Dad." I go, "What's up, dude?" He goes, "Am I an alcoholic?" And I go, "No." And he goes, "Damn it." And then my Wharf Rat alcoholic friends are hysterical. And I said, dude, that's not a great thing, you know?
Mm.
He's looking at me like, what do you mean? You guys are awesome. And 2 minutes later, he yanks on my shirt and I go, what's up? And he goes, am I in recovery? And I go, yes. And he goes, yeah. So he grabs the balloon and he goes, my name's Jeremiah and I have 6 years.
That's
And
so
and there
funny.
was like 50 wharf rats go, yeah. So, it was great.
I know so many AA kids, like kids of parents who make that joke where they're like, well, I'm 12 years sober.
Yeah.
I always think, and I always get a kick out of it.
Well, I mean, listen, in my house, there's no stigma. My kids have no judgment on an addict or an alcoholic because some of the most beautiful, kindest people in the world have this thing. We know that. And when they get sober, they're alive and well and healing, and there's a gratitude about them. And you know, it's weird, like, if I didn't grow, it was such a difficult thing for me to get sober because of the stigma, you know, because being Irish, you know, not just being Irish, but like there's a lot of drinking, not even alcoholic drinking, just good time drinking. Like we celebrate. An Irish wake looks like an Irish wedding. You know, the wake, there's one less person drinking and we party for any occasion. We have a good time. Now, my drinking wasn't like theirs. It was like that times 10. And if this is the way I told my wife one time, because I would take the kids to meetings, you know, and it was because I had to go. And I said, well, this is the deal. If they have this problem, because it does get passed down, they instead of battling it, they would probably be easy for them to say, well, I'll just get sober, like everyone else I knew growing up. Like, I don't know that this thing that saved my life and her life should be hidden and not talked about in our house because of our kids. And, you know, I mean, I don't go into details, but they know that there was a time when I struggled with substances. And the most important thing in my life is the fact that I am recovered from that. You know, I'm a person in recovery, and they know that I spend my life, I've dedicated my life to helping people get sober. You know, when I'm doing a group in Mountainside, I tell the clients, I was like, I'm going to be doing this on the ride home, and I'll be doing this tonight at 8 o'clock, and I'll probably be doing it tonight at like 9:30 when I'm not getting paid. I just do it, you know. I love meeting people that are, I love addicts and alcoholics. I love them. And I think people that are sober, we are like divinely and appointed to help them, because the identification you make when somebody, I got sober because I could identify with these guys' past, and they were showing me what their present was like. If I didn't have an identification, I would have just thought they were, you know, but I identified where they came from, you know, and it made me interested.
And a big through line in your story is your love of the Grateful Dead. I mean, you're decked out presently, head to toe, baby. If you look at his car, I was driving behind him on the way into work, and I knew it was your car because of all of like the stickers and the Have a Grateful Day license plate. But even though there's recovery at the shows, I'm sure there was a big association for you with like using, partying, and drinking because you had been at the shows for a long time. How did you reintegrate that into your life? Because I think that's a big stressor for a lot of people where they're like, I want to still enjoy my life. I want to still have fun, do what I love to do, but how do I do it sober?
Well, I think for people that are in recovery, when they want to do activities that they love, that they also accompanied with drinking, you know, they were still going fishing, still going to see the Yankees, not any other teams. And
Write that down.
and, you know, going to musical events, you know, places where people, you know, will party and drink. Once I had somebody take me through the steps, and I was kind of comfortable in a new lifestyle, like I was changing. What I come to realize is like my next drink, I think most any alcoholic or addict's next use, and I don't get into the triggers debate or anything like that, but I honestly, my experience is like my next drink is not out here. My next drink is right here and right here.
Mm.
And when this is cool and this is cool, this don't matter. Because we live in a world that has alcohol. We live in a world where people smoke weed. You know, we live in a world where people do drugs, and you know, we live in a world where people that don't have this problem enjoy themselves with it. And the fact that I don't do that anymore doesn't mean that I got to hide away from things. You know what I mean? Like if I couldn't go to live music because there's a lot of people there drinking and partying, my God, that would be awful. It would be awful. And the truth is, like, if you truly love something, it doesn't need any help. You know what I mean? Like I've been going to see concerts since I got sober. The first one was the Allman Brothers. And it was amazing. And I walked out of there sober. And I did that one like solo. And then when I hooked up with the Wharf Rats, it was like, oh my God. It's like, we're just this little crew of, sometimes when I'm in the show and I just know that the table is there, I feel safe because, you know, if I do need support, if I am feeling a little weird, because you don't take anything for granted, I know that there's a place I can go where I am absolutely protected, and because connection with other people in recovery is our key. So when we're walking around the crowd and we have the little yellow sticker that says one show at a time, people see me, they go, hey, where's the table? Or if somebody's struggling, they could say, hey, you sober? Yeah. Man, this is a tough one. And that's happened many times to me. It's funny, when I go to shows and I'm, you know, I'm always sitting next to the guy who just got out of detox like 3 days ago and is drinking, and he's like, "Oh my God!"
It's like, not odd, it's God.
Yeah, and you know, we're rocking to the show, doing a little 12-step work, and you know, what I tell him is like, "Please don't hit bottom tonight, bro. hold it off for a little bit, you know." But it's very funny how a lot of people that are. I always get situated next to people that are.
Yeah.
Talking about recovery.
And you've been able to be of service
to
so many people, which is why I'm glad we've been able to have you on for Recovery Month. September is Recovery Month, in case you guys haven't checked your calendars and you're listening to this without, I don't know, you're off the grid maybe. I don't know what situation you're in. But thank you for being on here.
You got it. It was excellent.
Yeah, I love you.
I love you too.
Godspeed.
If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, Mountainside can help. Call 860-365-6764 to speak with our caring treatment team.